Hello and welcome to CarTorque, a very special episode of CarTorque tonight. It's a James Bond special. We're going to be talking about all the James Bond cars, the crazy car chases, the crazy car stunts. You may be wondering to yourself, this doesn't sound like Matty J, and that's because it isn't. It's James J, frequent guest here at CarTorque, frequent collaborator with Matt. And as part of my training at Northwest FM, Matt has graciously let me host the show, which actually works out really well tonight because Matt is running late for, I think, the first time ever in CarTorque history. So I'm flying solo for the first part of the show. Not to get too far ahead of myself, but I guess we should jump right in because we have a lot to cover. There is a lot of James Bond cars, as you all fans of the movie series know. First off, the Aston Martin DB5. The quintessential Bond car, the Bond car of all Bond cars. It appeared in 8 of the 24 films, so a third of the films had the car. Mainly in the later films, it actually appeared as almost a homage to the earlier Sean Connery films. And the first appearance was in Goldfinger in 1964, and then again in Thunderball, the next film, in 1965. But it didn't appear to get again until 30 years later in GoldenEye in 1995. So it didn't appear in any of the Roger Moore or Timothy Dalton Bond films. And so I guess the Brosnan films in the 90s and the Craig films in the 2000s really brought the car back as a homage to those older films. And it appeared in Tomorrow Never Dies, the year 2 years after GoldenEye in 1997. The World Is Not Enough in 1999. And then it didn't appear again until Casino Royale in 2006. And then Skyfall 2012. And Spectre, the latest James Bond film, in 2015. You can't talk about James Bond without talking about the Aston Martin DB5. It's a beautiful car. It's probably my dream car. If you've listened to the show before, you'll know. It's just beautiful, and it has all the earmarks of a classic James Bond style. So in its original appearance, it had the pop-out gun barrels and full of gadgets, the bullet shield behind the rear window, the three-way revolving number plate, and the ejector seat. And just really cool stuff. Later, you see it in GoldenEye, and it has a pretty cool chase in the beginning of the film with the Ferrari 355, another really cool car. Xenia Onatopp, one of the Bond girl villains, is driving that, and it's really cool fun. I'm going to go quickly to a song so I don't make too much of a fool of myself before Matt gets here. Hopefully he'll be back after the break. Matt is back in the studio, thank God, because I don't think I would have done too well on my own. Thanks for training me, Matt. Thanks for let me have a go.
No, dude, you absolutely killed it. Really did well. Oh, sorry, am I on? Yeah, I'm on now. Yeah, dude, you really did well. I absolutely killed it for the moment I was away. I just got stuck at work. But yeah, you were talking about some great cars on the way, when I was listening on the way, and I was really impressed with the way you handled yourself on the show. You sounded better than me on the radio, which is
I don't know about that. So you heard the DB5 stuff. You're all happy with the DB5?
Mate, you covered the DB5 very well. One of my favorite parts was in the later. I think it was it was before Spectre. Skyfall, when he's like, when M's like to James, oh, what you gonna do with that? Like when he flicks up the ejector seat.
Yeah.
He's like, what do you say? Like, don't make me.
Don't you dare.
Yeah, that always made me laugh. And in the race with the Ferrari, it was at the 355. Yeah, that's right.
I knew you liked that one.
That was pretty dope. He was scaring the crap out of the lady in his car, and It was well, let's be honest here, a DB5 wouldn't keep up with a 355, but you know what? As in typical James Bond
would.
James
doesn't
Bond,
matter what car it is.
James Bond would
if
keep
it was
up.
a smart car, he'd still beat everyone else. He'd find a way.
But that car just oozes cool. Like it's just the cool. It's the coolest car ever.
I just want one. I want one stock, and then I want one with all the gadgets in it, and I just sit them side by side in the garage. They don't have to ever leave the garage. I just want to look at them and touch them.
Just polish.
and sit in the driver's seat and pretend I'm 5 years old and pretending to be James Bond.
Nothing wrong with that, James. Nothing wrong with that at all.
So we have about 1 million Aston Martins in the James Bond series that we have to get through. So let's power through some of these.
Well, the Aston Martin is the James Bond car, really.
It's the essential, and it's a British.
It is a British
company,
yep.
So it's very James Bond, his style. The next appearance of an Aston Martin in the James Bond movies was on Her Majesty's Secret Service in 1969, the
yep.
Aston Martin DBS, which isn't as nice looking car as the DB5, I don't think. It's kind of almost Mustang looking.
It is. It looks like it's pretty much UK's Mustang. Like it's got a bit of Capri in there, and yeah, but you know what? The later versions of that was a really cool looking car. It looked like a muscle car. It really looked good.
Yeah, even the grille had sort of a flat, straight grille. I think one of the great things about the DB5 and the newer Aston Martins is that sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, like a slightly off kilter edge on the grill. It's almost like a mouth or something.
Yeah, it's the Aston Martin grill, really. It's kind of like their trademark now.
Yeah, and the DBS didn't have that, but it didn't appear too much in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So the Aston Martin didn't appear again until 18 years later. It skipped all of the
all the 70s,
all the Roger Moore films. Roger Moore never drove a Aston Martin, never appeared in his films. Didn't appear till 18 years later in The Living Daylights, 1987.
It's a top flick, that one.
Yeah, I really like that one. A lot of people don't like it, but Timothy Dalton was Daniel Craig before Daniel Craig was Daniel Craig.
Yeah,
I mean, let's be honest, he's pretty cool. And the movie's a lot of fun too. And his Aston Martin was the V8 Vantage Volante.
Yeah, the V8 Vantage. It was the
Vantage.
It's a great looking car, and it was a great car in general. They've really started to appreciate these days. Pretty much all Astons, anything with Aston Martin badges is pretty pricey. But the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, especially in the 80s one, because they went to like the start of the 90s. They were kind of a really how can you say it? Kind of like an underdog hero.
Yeah.
Because like everyone was running at the time, like everyone was jumping on like Mercedes and BMW bandwagons, but Aston kept with their V8 and they kept with their pretty much layout based on I'm pretty sure it was based on an old Jag XJS still.
Yeah,
and it was dope, man. It was cool. It was a cool car.
I really like the grills. Kind of comes back to that original style. It's got these cool fog lamps.
It does.
It's kind of a bit sleeker than the DB5, but doesn't lose that shape.
And that car was like the transition stage between older Aston Martins and
the
new
old
Aston
and new.
Martins.
So right in the middle.
Right in the middle. And you can see parts of it because it's got like a plasticky bit on the grill and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can see the one era ending and one era starting, which is really why that car is kind of quintessential, to be honest with you.
That's right. And in the film, it appears as the convertible Volante version and the normal hardtop version when Bond's in the snow. And that's a really cool chase sequence where the car has tire spikes and a jet engine and just flies over a ice frozen lake and shoots missiles and lasers. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
It's in typical Bond fashion though. Like for that movie, I think it did have
had skis, yeah,
had skis, had skis on the wheels.
Pop out the side and it like stabilizes them on snow and it can drive. It's just such fun. It really harks back to the DB5 and Goldfinger with all the crazy gadgets. So after that, the Aston Martin didn't appear other than the DB5, of course. The new Aston Martin didn't appear until 15 years later in Die Another Day, 2002. The Aston Martin V12 Vanquish. I don't really like this one. It's Aston Martin, so it's a nice car.
Yeah.
But it's very early 2000s looking. It's kind of plasticky, very sleek, kind of these little ugly headlights and the movie wasn't very good, so that doesn't help either.
By that time, the V12 Vanquish, or the Vanquish in general, was pretty much well past its due by date, because pretty much after the Vantage, that's when the Vanquish, like the first gen of the Vanquish started. So by the time we got to 2012, it was an old car, and It wasn't.
No, this is 2002.
Sorry.
Yeah,
We're talking about 2002. It was an old car.
Yeah.
It was actually that car was still running XJS rear end, XJS, steering, a couple other things there and here and there. So it had been nipped and tucked, but it was an old car. And then as we get to the next car, what we're going to talk about in a minute, that's when Aston just started picking their game up again, and then. To be honest with you, I've created in the last 10 years the most beautiful cars I've ever seen.
I mean, and in that movie as well, the car goes invisible, which I think at that point everyone kind of gave up on Bond. And we'll see in Casino Royale, the next film in 2006, the Aston Martin DBS V12 appears and just blew everyone out of the water.
Yep.
Not to be confused with the DBS from the 60s. This is the new release version,
based on the DB9. Yep. So it was the sports. It was like the top end performance
it's like
version.
the next level version. In that film, it doesn't have many gadgets. It does have a defibrillator in the glove box, so that Bond can conveniently resuscitate himself. Also in that film, you might remember the amazing flip, which they won the Guinness Book of Records world record for the most amount of flips for a car on screen, which adds at seven flips, which is pretty cool because it's 007.
Crazy. Yeah.
I read that originally they just put a small ramp, and they got the stunt driver to drive over it to flip it, but the car is so well manufactured that it just kind of righted itself and just kept going.
Yeah, you're right. The downforce because the way the body kit had on it and everything, it stayed flat. And so I think they put a cannon in the floor.
They put an air cannon underneath, and as it's driving, fast down the road, they activate the air cannon, and it, explodes underneath and pushes the car up and flips it over. And, it's just an amazing sequence. The same car, the DBS V12, appears in the next film, Quantum of Solace, in 2008, although the car is much darker in this one. Yeah,
well... Because obviously he totaled the first one in Casino Royale, and then because Quantum of Solace, I think it was like a direct sequel.
Yeah, it takes place right after.
And then it broke my heart to see you get absolutely destroyed
in every movie. He destroys the Aston Martin, and my dad, his heart audibly breaks every time. You should have seen when we saw Spectre. He gets the brand new Aston Martin DB10, which we'll talk about. And, he totals that one. And my dad in the cinema next to me was just like, no!
Why the car?
It does it in every film. The DB10 Inspector, very futuristic, sleek, kind of small grille, small lights.
It's different.
Yeah.
But I like it. I reckon it's cool.
It's cool. It's a show car. It was never released. Car, concept car. So it only appeared in Spectre so far. I don't think they're ever going to release it. So we're going to go to a break. First up, during the break, if you want to give us a text, the number is 044 77 77 989. That's 044 77 77 989. Tell us your favourite Bond car, your favourite Bond movie, your favourite anything, or just say hi. Just during the break, we're talking about the V12 Vanquish in Die Another Day. The bad guy uses a Jaguar
XKR.
XKR, yeah, that's a cool car.
Oh, I really like those cars.
And it's green.
It's green, yeah.
Just great colour for that car.
British Racing Green, that colour is called?
That's right.
Yeah, it's to me, a Jag's the ultimate bad guy's car. Yeah. I love Jags for that reason because they're kind of cool.
It's very British and very sleek and modern. And also the villain in Spectre drives one, Batista's character. Originally in the novels, Bond was a Bentley driver. So you can imagine in the films if the Bentley was more, featured more prominently, it wouldn't be the same. It'd be, could you imagine Spectre with a brand new Bentley,
brand new Continental GT?
Yeah, I mean,
it'd be a bit weird.
It's a very British car, the same. It suits Bond, I think.
A bit Bodie, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, that's James. James is here in the studio. Cousin James, as we like to call him, to distinguish him from me.
Cousin James,
because there's so many James. There's like 6 by now, I think.
Oh, I'm counting. Yeah. And then, but you know what?
Matt collects Jameses like Pokemon.
Plus James Bond.
Oh yeah, and then when we're talking about James Bond, I didn't even think of that.
It's fitting because we got 2 James in the studio for the James Bond special, really. So,
and the Bentley does appear in From Russia with Love, 1963, 1935 Bentley 3.5 litre.
Yeah,
it's a nice old,
it's a cool car,
like vintage, and Bond can be seen, chatting up a girl on the riverside and chilling with his car, and there's like an intro to that. And an important part of James Bond history, whether you like it or not, is the BMW.
They had a big phase.
Yeah, in the 1990s, BMW threw cash at the James Bond producers, and the BMW was Bond's main car. The DB5 was a sort of secondary car, and in GoldenEye, the BMW Z3 was Q gave Bond that car, full equipped with all the gadgets, missiles, and machine guns. Unfortunately, he doesn't use it at all.
He drove it one little bit.
He drove it at the very end to get to the bad guy's lair, or to get the plane to get the bad guy's lair. Actually, he doesn't.
Maybe
even
they didn't pay enough that time.
Yeah, they probably didn't. They're just like, you know what, we'll chuck it in for a little bit of screen time. It's a nice car, a little zippy car. And it's 1995 sport. Soft. Two-seater soft-top cars just look like little electric shavers. They're not particularly beautiful cars. Then the next film, Tomorrow Never Dies, the BMW 750 IL.
This is my favourite of the lot of the BMW series.
Yeah, it's a very nice car. It's kind of a traditional-looking four-door, nothing sporty. However,
being the long wheelbase and the luxury version, they actually kitted it out to make it remote control.
Yeah.
That was sick.
Yeah, so Q gives Bond the remote control to pilot his car from outside the car, and he uses his little Ericsson phone. Remember Ericsson before? This is before the Sony Ericsson partnership. So he's got this cool little Ericsson, and he's using it to remote control the car. He jumps in the back, so he's literally a backseat driver using the phone control to control the car. Whether you like the movie or not, it's a really fun scene. It's well done. There's plenty of gadgets, explosions. It's not the Aston Martin, but it's a cool car. I like that. That's a lot of fun.
Bit of trivia for you: the 750 as well was in what's it called? Transporter.
Yeah, I really like that car.
It's a cool car.
Yeah. When I saw Transporter, I was like, "That's the car I want." The black, in the black.
Black on black.
In Bond, it's grey. Like the Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Maybe they were trying to go for the Aston Martin look. Although a lot of those cars are good grey at the time. The World Is Not Enough was the next film the BMW featured in the Z8. I guess the next version from the Z3. They
had the Z3 and then they got the Z4 now, but the Z8 it's actually a really, really rare car.
Really?
It or not. Yeah, there's not many around, and they're worth big bucks these days.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Not the most nicest looking car, but it's actually grown on me. But overall, as a car. It is very well sought after, and it kind of fitted in with that movie, I believe.
Yeah,
I mean, so.
Bond actually uses it for a little while before it gets chopped in half by a giant saw blade attached to a helicopter. So it's a good sequence. It's a lot of fun. That's it for the BMWs. They didn't appear in the Die Another Day. The Vanquish did.
Yep.
So I guess Aston Martin threw, more money.
Or BMW realised this movie's crap and they're not going to support it.
Yeah. I think they got sick of Pierce Brosnan's movies, like a lot of the rest of us did. The next film. So I guess to summarise that, the Aston Martin and the BMW are the two sort of main, the biggest focuses of but they appeared, in most of the Bond films.
Yeah.
Probably, mostly due to product placement, basically.
Pretty much. Well, if you look, especially in a lot of car movies and movies in general, like car companies, they do throw big bucks, and I think Ford did as well in the 2000s.
Oh, we'll talk about that later. A lot of money in the Daniel Craig
series.
A lot of Ford money.
They chipped in that. They actually released some of their cars in the movie, and then they haven't been seen yet.
Yeah.
So like
that's another thing I like to mention. A lot of the cars you see in James Bond films either have never been released or were specifically made for the film or were debuted in the film and then came out later.
Like
so
the PB10.
Yeah, he's always ahead of the curve. I mean, that's, classic Bond. He's ahead of everyone else. He's really cool, really stylish. So the next thing I really want to talk about is the Lotus Esprit S1. Yeah. From The Spy Who Loved Me, 1977. The Lotus Esprit is, it's a cool looking car. It's classic 70s supercar. This version, however, was nicknamed Wet Nelly and was a submarine, so you could drive it in the water and pilot.
This is one of my favorite cars out of all the Bonds.
I have a little. I think I still have it. It's a little Matchbox, version of the submarine car, and I used to play with it so much. I love it. It's like real one from the 80s.
Do you know how they filmed that? The actual submarine. They actually made they made a little version of it, and
they made a little version with two scuba divers inside who had to wear breathing equipment.
That's cool.
And they had two
Paddle.
pilots, and they had to do all the controls and so I mean, even though the car itself didn't turn into a submarine, that version is a real submarine.
And you want to hear a bit of trivia about that?
Yeah.
Do you know how they got that car in the film?
No.
What Lotus did, Lotus, this is no word of a lie. What they did, they took the badges off the car and they put it at the front of the studio before they were going to film. And they're like, because at this stage Lotus was coming. I think they were doing bad or something. And they're like, okay, we need something big to make us back into big time. Yeah. And they left it out there, and the people just get out of the crowd because it had never been seen before. They're like, well, what is this car? And then people were like, we got to have this car in the movie. Phoning around. And they found out it was a Lotus, and then they pretty much offered Lotus, I'd say big money to do it. So they're like, yep, sure. And then that's how that car got in the movie. Otherwise, it wasn't actually planned for that movie.
I didn't know that. That's
pretty cool.
Yeah. I really like also in the next, not the next film, the one after, For Your Eyes Only in 1981. Bond drives the Lotus Esprit Turbo, which I really like that car. It's got this really cool red paint job. I think it's got the gold stripes down the side, and Bond drives in the snow, and he's got the skis up, like resting on the back kind of windshield. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, the windshield also has the black slats, the Venetians.
Venetians, yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, the Lotus Esprit has the the classic 70s look with the pop-up lights.
Exactly.
And it's a cool car.
It's the wedge shape.
Yeah.
The classics, like the 70s supercar wedge shape, they call it. So they're all they all kind of look like that.
Yeah. It's kind of the kind of 70s Lambo.
It is
kind of look.
It is.
Yeah, but I mean, it's really cool. Lotus is a British company, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess more James Bondy than other cars.
They're owned by a Malaysian company, Proton, now. But let's not go there.
Back in the day. Speaking of For Your Eyes Only, this is my favourite Roger Moore film. It's a bit more serious, and the action's much better than most of the other Roger Moore films. But one thing I really like about it is there's a car chase in the middle of the film. That's one of my favourites, where Bond drives. Wait for it. A Citroen 2CV.
I love this car.
It's this little yellow. I guess if you don't know what a Citroen 2CV, I guess it's kind of like a Volkswagen Beetle, except a bit higher and a bit rounder and a bit sillier looking.
It is. You know what it looks like? It looks like the corrugated iron you get on sheds.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, and they've just slapped it together.
Yeah, it has this ruffled metal.
That car though, it's super cute. It's called in France the Deux Chevaux, I think they call it, and it's you know how they. I'll give you a bit of insight into it. Sorry, I'm taking over your thing here, James, but that car was designed for one purpose only. It was designed to take a bunch of peasants in a field. With a carton of eggs and not break it as it went through a field. That was the only intention of that car.
That actually reminds me...
It's true. It's no BS.
That actually reminds me of... didn't Hitler have the Volkswagen Beetle designed to drive over sand so that he could, meet his troops on the beach?
Pretty much.
So I guess it's the same kind of thing, a soft driving over rough terrain.
Yep.
That was the day Audi was born.
Speaking of the 2CV and For Your Eyes Only, that's a really cool car chase. It's really well shot. it's really for such a silly car. It's such a well done scene, such a fun scene. They're driving through the Spanish village, through olive groves, through winding cobblestone streets, and at one point they flip over. And all the locals come out and help them flip back on the side because the bad guys are chasing them. Bad guys are in Peugeot 504s, cool Euro bad guy cars.
It was
very very henchman bad guy car, the Peugeot. And yeah, they flip them over, and Bond, obviously it takes command of the car and just outsmarts and outdrives all the bad guys in such a fun, such a fun, silly car.
In a Citroen.
Yeah,
in a 2-seat.
in the egg car, we'll call it.
It's basically a Citroen versus a Peugeot, and you know how Peugeot drivers are.
Speaking of henchman cars, we forgot to talk about in Quantum of Solace, the opening car chase. Bond's being chased by the Alfa Romeo 159s.
Yeah, that is one of my favourite opening sequences. One of my favourite car chases as well. It is just that well done, and those Alphas in black looked so cool. They looked so cool, so sinister.
Very Euro bad guy.
It was
and the bit where one of them's coming, really fast around the corner, and Bond knocks him, and he goes absolutely flying off the edge.
You just hear it limit about.
And he's just flipping, and he just hits the ground and rolls. It's such a cool sequence. We could talk about so many cars. I got lists and lists and lists in here.
The bad guys have had some good cars, haven't Bond?
Usually Alfa Romeos, to be honest. Sometimes Mercedes, sometimes Peugeot. That's the henchman car. I just saw James pointing. This is a cool car. The Toyota 2000 GT in You Only Live Twice, 1967. Yep. This is driven by Aki, one of the Japanese secret agents who picks up, helps Bond escape, and it's this cool little zippy Toyota convertible. But actually, it wasn't originally a convertible.
It's the only one. Yeah.
Do you know the story behind this?
He didn't fit in the car.
Sean Connery was so tall, he didn't fit in the little Toyota. So they had to cut off the top and make it a convertible for the film.
It looked gorgeous as a convertible,
so cool.
though.
It's really cool. I saw it. There was a James Bond expo, I think, last year or the year before at the exhibition center. Yeah, and I saw it there.
It was there.
Really cool. It is really small. I'm a short guy, but it's really small. It's really cool looking film. Also, in You Only Live Twice, Matt, you'll like this bit of trivia. The Mazda Cosmo appeared as the first Mazda rotary engine.
Yeah.
We talked about
that. Was that the Turbo Cosmo?
No, it was
no.
But that's the first appearance of the Cosmo in a movie that I know of, and it's the first rotary engine.
How many times do you reckon they flooded it on the
rotary? Bro, it's not starting.
I know Matt likes that bit of trivia. So we're going to go to another break. That was sorry,
no,
mate.
Go, man. Sorry,
technically,
I'm taking over. Your
technically,
bit.
It is your show, so you are the boss. However, I have the reins.
You do have the reins, and I'll give you the reins for tonight. So it's all yours, James.
Thank you.
It just came kind of naturally. I just went for it.
It woke you up right after the break. One thing we forgot to mention is the Lotus Esprit S1, the Wet Nelly submarine version. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, actually owns that car now.
Oh, right.
And he put it in his collection, and he, wants to one day fit it out with all, electronic, futuristic
batteries
self-driving stuff, and
to make it go underwater.
Yeah, yeah. He wants to do some crazy stuff with, exploring the space. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't mind exploring the ocean as well, which is almost, completely undiscovered.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Being underwater is like being in space, like deep underwater, like the pressure and the
Scary.
cold. Yeah, that's a Bond film for you. The under the ocean, the Doctor No underneath the Doctor No's lair under the sea.
Austin Powers.
Yeah, exactly. Daniel Craig said Austin Powers has ruined James Bond, and at this point, the movies, even though the movies are dead serious, no one really takes them serious. Like Spectre, at the end of Spectre, everyone was like, "All right,
whatever,
come on, mate, come on, Blofeld, whatever."
Yeah. What the hell? What were they thinking? Seriously. Oh.
Speaking of Diamonds Are Forever, what people don't like this film. I really love it. It's a lot of fun. It's really funny. It's campy as hell.
That's the point of it.
It's really silly. Sean Connery's toupee is like Trump level.
It's so bad.
It's so bad. So funny. And in the film, there's a scene where Bond drives a Mustang.
My favorite scene.
Ford Mustang Mark 1. It's a really cool red color. It has this black trim around the bottom. And during a car chase in Las Vegas, the Bond is being chased by the cops.
Sorry to interrupt you, Joe. Would you say this is the biggest mistake of all time in cinema?
Not in all time cinema, but it's just so funny and it fits the film so perfectly. Well, yeah. So what happens is Bond's being chased in the Mustang by the cops through Las Vegas, through the Las Vegas Strip. And the only way he can escape is through a small alleyway where the Mustang will not fit. So what he does, he drives up on a small ramp and he gets the car on two wheels and goes through the alleyway, just fits. But what happens is when he enters the alleyway to escape the cops, he's on his two right wheels. And when he exits the alleyway, he's on his two left wheels. And, I guess at the time of filming, they just didn't notice it. And so what happens in the film is absolutely hilarious.
I love the fix. The
fix on this is like 70s hilarious. Like, it fits so well. What they do, like halfway between the alleyway, when Bond's, almost vertical, on two wheels, there's a quick shot of him and Tiffany Case, the Bond girl, in the car. And the car just kind of like switches wheels. It just goes, and it just kind of like there's no room in the alleyway for this. It doesn't make any sense, but it just like that's the way I was fixing it. Was the car switches wheels halfway through just to fix their continuity error.
Oh, it's so good.
this is one of the reasons I love the movie. It's so silly. It's so fun. It's just full of hilarious stuff. Even the continuity errors are just blatantly, hilarious. The Mustang Mark 1, this is the sort of same line as the Eleanor in the original.
It is, yeah. Gone in 60 Seconds.
Gone in 60 Seconds. So the Eleanor was 1973, obviously brand new version in that, and this is a 71 version. So
it's just a newer version, a couple of years.
Bond did Eleanor before Gone in 60 Seconds. Bond did everything before everyone else.
So what's it called? Pretty much Nicolas Cage and who played the first one? Who played like the main guy in the first one?
Gone in 60 Seconds.
Yeah.
It was H.B. Balicki.
Yeah. So
something like that.
Yeah. So basically, you got the middle finger stuck up to you by James Bond. He did it first, guys.
I mean, James Bond would do that. Middle finger to anyone. What else? We've got the AMC Hornet hatchback. Now, this is used in a very famous sequence, probably one of the best car stunts ever put on film. This was in The Man with the Golden Gun in 1974. Bond's driving an AMC Hornet that he stole from an AMC dealership in Thailand, if you can believe that. It's just hilarious 70s product placement. Roger Moore movies are hilarious when it comes to product placement. There's I remember when Quantum of Solace came out, I think, and maybe Skyfall too, and people were complaining that Bond was drinking Heinekens, and this is product placement. But there's a scene in Moonraker where Bond is like going to the bad guy's lair, and he's like riding a horse and wearing a poncho, and it's like a parody of the Marlboro cowboy ads from the 70s, and it's just, oh my god! And then later, or maybe before or later in the film, Bond's driving, and there's like just Marlboro billboards everywhere. Like, it's just, I think he even crashes through one or crashes next to one, and there's just a really big close up of this big Marlboro.
Wow.
And it's just, you can't complain about Heinekens. Just let the Heinekens go. I mean, Bond can have a beer if he wants. I mean, for Christ's sake. I mean, Roger Moore never drove, I don't think Roger Moore ever drank a martini in any of his films.
No, I don't think he did either.
And he never drove an Aston Martin.
Some James Bond he was, no?
Well, I've gone completely off track. The AMC Hornet hatchback and the Man with the Golden Gun, one of the best stunts ever. The 360 corkscrew, a barrel. It does a full barrel roll and lands in an AMC hatchback of all things. They did it in one take. Apparently, depending on the source, there was either 6 or 8 cameras filming simultaneously. It was completed by a stuntman named Bumps Willard, who actually didn't get credited for the stunt, which is sad. So shout out to Bumps.
Yeah. A big CarTorque shout out to Bumps.
Big ups to Bumps.
Big ups to Bumps.
And it's just an amazing sequence where he's like driving and he goes off a broken piece of bridge. Does a full 360 barrel roll over a river and then lands on the other broken piece of the bridge on the other bank, river bank. And
Dukes of Hazzard before Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, it's just no one had ever seen that, and they still haven't done anything. I don't think that good since.
Not with someone in the car.
Not with someone in the car.
It's all CGI now.
And this was actually the first. This was back in 1974. So this was the first ever computer calculated stunt. So the Bond producers went to the Calspound Corporation, which did aerospace research, physics and stuff like that. And they actually put in their computer program, the physics program, and calculated and simulated what they need to do to get it to perfectly spin and land at the end. And there's no tricks too. It's the full jump. Like there's no cutaways, and they actually do land it. So
it's impressive.
And that technology, that made the physics to simulate that jump, is now used in car games like Forza, which I'm a massive fan of.
Yeah, great game.
So without James Bond, we might not have some of the best car video games. Thank you, James Bond.
Thanks, James Bond again.
all pray to James Bond.
To the Bond gods, pretty much.
Yeah, I guess if you can thank the Man with the Golden Gun for anything, it's that, because the rest of the movie is just so bloody silly. I mean, there's one point where Bond fights a bunch of like Chinese schoolgirls who are like kung fu students, who are obviously grown men in wigs. Like, it's just hilarious. Every bit of the movie is so silly. One bit that's not silly though is Scaramanga, the villain, the actual man with the golden gun, played by Christopher Lee. He's just one of the best Bond villains. Just a really cold, cool guy.
Badass. He's just a badass.
Yeah, just a badass guy. And Christopher Lee actually knew Ian Fleming, the author of the Bond books, and they hanged out. But Christopher Lee knew everyone. Like that guy, was in World War II. He was a SAS special forces.
Ops, yeah.
He like killed Nazis with knives. Like he was just a badass dude. Like he was like real James Bond, like for real. And I don't know if this is true, but some say that his James Bond is at least partially based on Christopher Lee's life. I know James Bond's based on a lot of people, but Christopher Lee's in there.
Is he a 00?
He probably is.
He's 000, like he's before everyone else because he's such a badass. He also knew J.R.R. Tolkien, the
Lord of the Rings,
the author of Lord of the Rings, and he apparently, before he passed away, which is sad, he read the Lord of the Rings trilogy every year. So he was a big fan, and he appeared in those movies as Saruman. Anyway, I'm getting off topic again, waffling on. This is not CarTorque, and this is not James Talk. It's CarTorque. So
it's all good. You've got the reins, as I said.
Also in the Man with the Golden Gun, the AMC Matador Coupe, another blatant bloody.
I like that car though.
It's like this ugly, like champagne brown.
It's
But the notable thing about it is that Scaramanga, the villain, to escape, he attaches wings and a tail section and an engine to the top of the car. And uses the car like to fly away, basically.
Without hydraulics to do the flaps and stuff, he just puts them on.
It's just hilarious. Like, it's just so funny, and it's perfect for that silly kind of film. Actually, the car didn't fly. They drove it down the runway and then they cut, and then the actual flying away is a model. But I'm pretty sure for a fact there are flying cars that are similar. I mean, not similar. That you can drive them on the ground. And
Yeah,
then,
I'd say that they've been made. So
yeah.
definitely. I mean, like, look,
They're not AMC hatchbacks.
But like, I always thought from that, because I remember watching that movie as a really, really young boy. But then I played Rush 2049, and it's getting a bit off topic here. But when you jump in the air, you press a button, and the wings would pop outside of the car.
Yeah.
So that kind of always reminded me of that. But yeah.
That's something for the Bond producers to think of. You know, this instead of the Bond films getting so serious, Bond should, the Aston Martin should just have wings.
It should just
giant Buzz Lightyear wings. He pushes a big like red button,
pop out.
and they just pop out, and he goes da 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 da.
Well, it's like it's interesting.
We're almost done for the night. We'll quickly talk about the Ford Mondeo 2.5 litre ST from Casino Royale. Blatant product placement from Ford, who now owns Aston Martin.
Well, they've sold them off now.
Oh, okay. Well, at the time they did. 10 years ago, this is now.
They still got like little bits and pieces with them, but but that car basically debuted in that film, and then it became the car here in Australia known as the XR5 Turbo Mondeo.
Yeah.
Which is in itself a pretty cool car. It's got a Volvo engine, believe it or not. So,
really?
Yeah, it's got a Volvo 5-cylinder turbo. But yeah, that was the car he drove in
when he gets to the Bahamas, he's driving to the hotel, and it's just shots of him driving. Very blatant product, but it's very nice. It's a nice car, and it's something that's I guess affordable for people. Like, it's not a supercar.
Yeah.
Before we go, I'd just like to mention shout out to the 1957 Chevy Bel Air from car. Dr. No, 1962. The first car Bond's ever driven on screen.
Yep.
So shout out to the good old Chevy Bel Air.
The 57 Chevy, as most people know, is one of the most famous body shapes of all time. It's one of the most popular cars of all time. The 57 Chevy. So it was great to see that Bond actually drove one, and it was the first car pretty much. So
stick around, everyone. That's the end of our show. We got Street Hustle with Stratos next. Listen to Dr. Rock For Your Pleasure on Mondays at 6 p.m. It's the end of Rocktober, so he'll have live bands in. And also listen to Dr. Rock on the Thursday Waffle with Fitzy at 7 p.m. on Thursdays. Keep an ear out for my show. I guess after this training, I'll get a show up about movies and waffle on about that.
It's going to happen, man.
And Matt, would you like to sign off?
Yeah, well, I'll just like to say thanks. You did a bang-up job these last few weeks, James. Yeah, you've been in here the last 3 weeks, and you've really killed it. You're very smooth what you've done. So I hope for the listeners at home that they've enjoyed themselves. And thanks again to cousin James for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And of course to you, James. Yeah, you've done a bang-up job. So hopefully your show gets up and running very soon. I'll have to come and pay a visit and annoy you for a change. But in the meantime, thanks for that. Thanks for listening to CarTorque. I'll see you same time next week, Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Take it easy.